It's Friday, November 24. In the headlines, government begins discussion on strengthening gun law, and we continue to highlight the work of Jamaica's first female nuclear engineer, Dr. Charlene Smith. In business news, BOJ reports success in controlling inflation. Regionally, Barbados says the climate crisis is multi-dimensional. Internationally, first halt to hostilities in 7 weeks since the start of the war on Gaza. And in sports, sprint hurdler Ronald Levy tests positive for banned substance. And ICC announces ban for former batsman Marlon Samuels. This is the weekend news on PBC Jamaica. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. The Firearms Prohibition, Restriction and Regulation Act 2022 came into operation on the 1st of November 2022, and it repealed and replaced the Firearms Act, which was passed in 1967. Since then, more than 180 persons have been charged under the law. However, with the use of illegal firearms in gruesome killings in recent times, the government is looking at tightening the law even further. Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of National Security Dr. Horace Chang addressed the issue in the House of Representatives this week.
A regime that prohibits weapons, certain firearms and ammunition, and activities relating to prohibited weapons, and strengthen the penalties for offences relating to prohibited weapons and prohibited activities, distinct from the regime for the treatment of firearms and ammunition that may be licensed and the activities in relation to these weapons under the regulatory framework.
He says the legislation has been tested in the past few months, and the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, DPP, has listed some anomalies.
These anomalies were evident, in particular, following the recent judgment on the matter of Rex versus Atlee Murray, which led to the press release by the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, providing clarity on the sentence passed in the Act for the offences of possession of prohibited weapon and unauthorized possession of ammunition. In the reference matter, the ODPL has further signaled the office's intention to appeal the judgment of the court.
Dr. Chang says the DPP has asked for adjustments to Section 5 of the Act.
With respect to possession of a prohibited weapon, the Ministry of National Security convened a meeting on the 16th of November with several key stakeholders and ministries, departments, and agencies. Madam Speaker, the main intent of the meeting was to discuss the proposed increase to the penalty that may be imposed under Section 5.
According to Minister Chang, the existing penalty is imprisonment for not less than 15 years nor more than 25 years, as the court considers appropriate.
Consideration is now being given to the penalty being a maximum sentence of life imprisonment, which was the original policy statement, with a mandatory minimum of not less than 20 years.
Dr. Chang explains that this would have some dissuasive power. He notes that further discussion will be held with legal teams. Several measures are being developed to ensure that there are no further breaches or theft of Caribbean Examination Council papers, CXC Papers, during future exam sittings. During this year's May-June CXC tests, a Caribbean Secondary Examination Certificate Mathematics Paper 2 exam was leaked on May 17 at an exam center in Jamaica, the name of which has not been made public. On June 14, 2023, a fireproof cabinet containing exam papers in St. James High School in Montego Bay was stolen by burglars, along with a safe containing canteen records. Permanent Secretary in the Education Ministry, Dr. Kassan Troop, provided an update on the matters at this week's post-cabinet press briefing. She said investigations into the breach and the theft remain ongoing.
Disappointingly, the cabinet with the math paper and other papers were also included that were done already. We have not yet retrieved that or recovered that, but the investigations are ongoing It really cost us as a country. It was very embarrassing, for our minister to sit in a regional meeting of ministers and for CXC to be explaining that there's a breach that will impact other students, and for us to be taking full responsibility and apologizing for the disruption.
Dr. Troop informed that following the incidents, the Education Ministry had to put a number of systems in place to ensure the students resat their exams.
The OAC is going through an audit now of all the safety cabinets that we have in our schools. They are specially built for this and with special codes and so forth. So we are going to make sure that all of those systems are working. The last deliberations we had with OEC is to add to their budget the security feature of CCTV camera, either to attach that to the cabinet itself or to install that in the location of the cabinet so we can have instant footage of what's happening around the papers. We will be retraining all our principals and ensuring that they observe the protocols for exam administration. We get the sense from the audit that some of the expectations were relaxed a bit because of over the years of doing the exam with the same team.
She is Jamaica's first female nuclear engineer, and she was the first black woman to earn a PhD in nuclear engineering at the University of Florida. Now she has made it her mission to introduce fellow Jamaicans to the world of engineering. As a child in St. Catherine, Smith dreamed of becoming a scientist and inventor so she could help to resolve some of the basic problems faced by families like hers. Prior to attending UF, she graduated Copen State University in 2017 with a degree in chemistry and mathematics. She received a National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship in 2018 to study at UF's Department of Materials Science and Engineering. Now, she has a mission to inspire and teach young Jamaicans with similar dreams through her Jamaica Nuclear Engineering Boot Camp.
When we talk about energy reliability, we're talking about how often we can have that energy source running. If it has a capacity factor of 30%, it means only running 30% at a time. During the hottest time in the year, these solar panels are operating at what percent capacity factor?
Over 30%.
Is that a lot?
No.
And so capacity factor of nuclear, how does it look?
Extremely.
Right, if you average this out, it's going to be 92%. The only energy source that comes close is geothermal.
The bigger mission here is to take a hard look at the energy mix in Jamaica. We have a very large dependence on imported fossil fuels to produce electricity. It's extremely expensive.
Jamaica, we know 89% fossil fuels, and wind, solar, and hydro.
Do you ever hear people complain about the electricity bill?
All the time.
You plug in your phone, you're using it at the same time, they're like, why are you running up my electricity bill?
In some households, they are forced to not use the lights during the night.
Say the Prime Minister come to you and say, what energy sources would be the best to use in Jamaica? We can't use solar. Yes. Prime Minister said we can't use wind. Yes. But we can't use that alone because why? They're not on all the time, right? So we go over to the base load energy sources. And base load energy means 24/7 energy. Jamaica is doing this. It's using the 24/7 electricity from fossil fuel, and it's getting the variable energy from renewables. There are some parts of the world where say, we don't want that, but we have this. But there was a study done by the University of the West Indies that identified 8 Caribbean countries that have geothermal capability. Jamaica was not on that list, unfortunately. I remember how small our hydro capability is. If you now have hydro capacity or geothermal, then you can look at nuclear as 24/7 energy because you have a higher capacity factor, and you mix it with renewables, right?
To do this boot camp, I put together a team of Jamaicans, Americans, people from the UK, Canada, who are very knowledgeable in this area.
We're going to do a workshop called Climate Fresk, where you guys get to collaborate and try to figure out how climate change works.
Transportation, agriculture, building use.
Yeah.
Wait, why you put it in a one line?
And it's melting now.
Yeah, that releases carbon dioxide into the atmosphere.
3, 4, 5, 6. Stand right here, guys. 7.
So here's your slowpoke tool. As reactors go, this is really, really tiny. This is a tiny reactor. And all we're doing is just introducing those samples into the core. So it goes through these white tubes, and that's where it's exposed to its neutrons. This is going to show me how far. It's my pleasure always to expose young minds to what we do here. Furthermore, these kids are very smart. They ask great questions. They're very enthusiastic.
That's the actual weight of the reactor.
That's the actual weight of the core, yes.
Miguel, are you good?
That's a part.
There are a whole lot of opportunities for a country like Jamaica, and we're just not utilizing as much as we can.
In the extended business report, the Bank of Jamaica reports success in controlling inflation. We have more on this story, plus your usual market updates from Danita Rodney.
Welcome to the extended business report. I'm Danita Rodney. In this week's report, the Bank of Jamaica says it has achieved significant success in its effort to control inflation. Speaking at the bank's quarterly monetary policy press conference, Governor Richard Bowles reported that headline inflation in October was 5.1%, which is within the central bank's target range of 4 to 6%.
Bank of Jamaica welcomes the data showing that inflation in Jamaica has continued to trend downward. Statin reported on Wednesday, just last week, that Jamaica's annual headline inflation rate at October 2023 was 5.1%, squarely within the bank's target range of 4 to 6%. This was below the 5.9% at September of this year, below the bank's projections and much lower than the peak rate of 11.8% recorded at April 2022.
The governor continued his report by listing some factors that contributed to the downward trend.
Contributing to the low inflation outturn at October were declines in the key drivers such as grains prices, shipping costs, and inflation expectations. The exchange rate has also remained generally stable, given strong tourism and remittance inflows.
The governor also said that despite previous projections that inflation would rise, with the finance minister's announcement of a temporary fare reduction, inflation is now projected to remain in the target range.
However, in the context of Tuesday's announcement by the Minister of Finance and Public Service of a temporary two-step reduction in JUTC bus fares, effective January 1 and April 1, 2024, inflation is now projected to generally remain within the target range, except for December 2023 and a few months in 2024.
According to the Statistical Institute of Jamaica, Jamaica generated just over $1.2 billion in export earnings between January and July this year. This is said to represent a 30.6% increase over the $939.1 million earned for the corresponding period in 2022. According to the Data Institute, the increased exports this year were primarily spurred by higher outflows of crude materials, excluding fuels and mineral fuels. Now for your market updates. In foreign exchange trading for Thursday, November 23, the US dollar sold for an average of $155.94. The Canadian dollar ended trading at $114.76. The pound sterling traded for $197.17, and the euro sold for $173.72. In GSE trading, the GSE index advanced by over 4,376 points. The junior market index advanced by over 5 points. The combined market index advanced by over 4,148 points, and the All-Jamaican Composite Index advanced by over 3,739 points. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 97 stocks, of which 41 advanced, 39 declined, and 17 traded firm. Stocks advanced for 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited, AS Bryden and Sons Holdings Limited, and Blue Power Group Limited. Stocks declined for Access Financial Services Limited, AMG Packaging and Paper Company Limited, and Berger Paints Jamaica Limited. Trading firm were Barita Investments Limited, Cateris Limited, and Deramon Trading Company Limited. The overall volume leaders were Sagicor Select Funds Limited Financial with over 9 million units, Trans-Jamaican Highway Limited with over 1 million units, and Fosrich Company Limited with over 300,000 units. In regional stocks, in Trinidad and Tobago, Calypso Micro Index Fund posted a volume of 14 shares. On the Barbados Stock Exchange, Insurance Corporation of Barbados Limited was the volume leader with 500 shares. They were followed by Epic Caribbean Property Fund Value Fund, which traded 357 shares. In other business news, after a stronger than expected pandemic recovery, economic growth in Latin America and the Caribbean is slowing amid tighter policies to combat inflation, a timely withdrawal of pandemic-related fiscal stimulus, and a weakening global environment.
Latin America and the Caribbean region has fared well through the recent very large global shocks. It recovered strongly from the pandemic and managed quite effectively the largest inflation surge in decades. But the region needs to boost its growth potential, which is low, and faces new challenges, including climate change. Indeed, the region saw a quick rebound from the pandemic-driven recession, expanding by 7.3% in 2021 and 4.1% in 2022. But growth is now slowing to 2.3% this year and next.
In market data for oil prices were steady on Friday as traders kept their powder dry ahead of an OPEC Plus meeting that could bring agreement on further supply cuts. Brent crude futures were down 8 cents at $81.34 a barrel, while West Texas Intermediate crude lost 70 cents to $76.40. And that was the business report on PBCJ. Back to you, Simone.
Thanks, Danita. In regional news, Barbados has advised the Organization of American States that countries of the developed world must be on board to help address issues countries tackling climate change face. Permanent representative to the OAS, Ambassador Noel Lynch, sees this as critical going forward to deal with the adaptation and resilience issues.
We need to use this multilateral platform, sir, for lobbying the international financial institutions to make more resources available to us who simply don't have the resources. The developing world, and particularly the smaller countries, we are faced with a dilemma in that climate, which we never could have expected, or the expenses of climate 10 years ago, 20 years ago, resources for these issues, and we were already highly indebted, has crowded out a lot of the things that we need to do, our natural development areas. So our health, education, transportation, digital transfer, all of these issues have suffered because the little bit of resources that we do have, we've not got to utilize in those areas. What it does is, it puts pressure on some countries, like for example, migration issues. It's a serious issue. And therefore, Mr. Chairman, our membership should come together to assist each other before we even get to deal with the issues that are going to come up in COP28. I want to thank the United States and some other countries for agreeing to the Loss and Damage Fund, which has been completely almost settled before we even get to COP. And I'm happy that some of them have agreed and understand that this is not for long-term issues, and it is not climate reparations either. It is about a fund being made available to us to handle any immediate issues that we have.
With many people living in border communities concerned about Venezuela's planned December 3 referendum and any potential aggression towards Guyana, government ministers are traveling to those communities and engaging residents directly as part of a national effort to improve public relations. This was revealed on Wednesday night at an event hosted by the University of Guyana.
I know that the government is in the midst of preparing a video information on this. They're preparing animated cartoons on it. They are currently in process of a PR outreach in all our frontier communities. By that I mean that a number of our ministers are about to go into the frontier and meet on direct meetings with the population on our frontiers. We are translating, as I speak, all of these documents into 5 Amerindian languages, into Spanish and Portuguese.
That was Kit Nascimento, the former communications advisor to the Office of the President, speaking at a University of Ghana event on the Ghana-Venezuela border controversy and Venezuela's December 3rd referendum. During that event, many people spoke about the need for a more robust public relations strategy so that Guyanese can be kept abreast of all developments and not fall prey to Venezuelan propaganda. In response, Mr. Nascimento said a more intense strategy is being rolled out and the government ministers will be going into border communities to engage residents directly and alleviate any concerns they might have. Such engagements are viewed as particularly necessary, the forum heard, because groups of residents have been trying to relocate to Georgetown or other parts of the coast until that referendum is over.
When we talk about referendum, we the indigenous people there, we don't have idea what the referendum is about there. And when it comes to communication and so, we don't have the communication access there. So it really breaks my heart to know that we don't even know what is the referendum referring to.
Jean LaRose of the Amerindian People's Association and a Region 1 resident was among those who urged people not to leave their homes out of fear.
Come December 3rd, I'm going back to Santa Rosa, which is my homeland. Some people are running. I'm going back to Santa Rosa. That is where my roots are. That is where my home is. I want to encourage our people. Stay in your homes. That is what you own. Stay on your lands. That is what you own.
Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell has been elaborating on his recent announcement that the Grenada government is contemplating collaborating with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to enhance the country's health sector services.
Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell underscored that the Grenada government was not just seeking investment or investors to assist with the construction of its proposed teaching hospital when officials attended the CARICOM Saudi Arabia summit on November 16. Instead, he said government recognizes the need to address the challenges that exist in its primary healthcare system. During the summit, Grenada reached an agreement with Saudi Arabia to send a technical team to the kingdom.
So in the case of the Ministry of Health, the minister has offered to host a technical team from Grenada as soon as we are ready, backing the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia so that we can explore further the possibility of collaborating with them in relation to the virtual hospital and how they have been able to use it as a tool to enhance service delivery to the citizens of Saudi Arabia.
The visit facilitated a deeper understanding of Saudi Arabia's healthcare system and explored potential collaborations that can contribute to the improvement and development of Grenada's healthcare services. One of the highlights of the summit for Mitchell was a tour of Saudi Arabia's virtual hospital.
At the invitation of the Minister of Health, he thought it would be a very useful exercise for us to see a non-traditional hospital. The virtual hospital is one of 2 that operates in the world. And it was, to some extent, a mind-blowing experience because it demonstrated how you can truly leverage modern-day technology to provide medical care and medical attention to citizens that otherwise may simply just not have access to it, either because of the remoteness of their location or the critical nature of the injury that they may be suffering that may require immediate attention, and oftentimes the ability to travel to a health center or health clinic or medical facility means by the time that happens, the patient life may have come to an end or their situation may have deteriorated even further.
This experience provided the Prime Minister with valuable insights into innovative approaches to healthcare delivery that could be adopted by Grenada. Prime Minister Mitchell expressed a desire to reshape Grenada's healthcare model by embracing technology and focusing on promoting wellness and prevention rather than solely treating sickness.
One of the key things that was noticeable from the virtual hospital is the use of data to track health trends within Saudi Arabia and to be able to proactively address it. One of the key policy initiatives that they shared with us was to ensure that the healthcare is shifted from the focus on sickness to that of wellness, that of prevention, and to ensure that the primary healthcare system is really transformed so that you can in fact protect the secondary and tertiary healthcare system. Because if not, you can build 10 new hospitals. They could have all of the modern equipment, but if your population is not healthy, if your population life expectancy is declining, it simply means that you will not be able to address the many health challenges you have by simply building facilities.
In international news, a 4-day truce and the expected release of some Palestinian prisoners and Israeli captives will bring some relief to a population who have endured almost 7 weeks of Israeli bombardment. This ceasefire is the first opportunity people have had to move around without the threat of Israeli airstrikes since October the 7th. More from Al Jazeera.
For the first time in 7 weeks, the sunrise over Gaza had a different soundscape. Well, not completely. Some explosions were heard early on Friday morning before the ceasefire came into effect. Telltale smoke above the skyline.
We are still nervous. We are happy that the ceasefire is started and the killing stops. And we are praying and hoping that the ceasefire holds. But we have a mixed feeling. People as well are very sad about all the deaths and the casualties.
Many bodies are still buried under the rubble. The non-stop Israeli attacks meant paramedics and teams of volunteers were unable to retrieve them. The Gaza Health Ministry estimates nearly 15,000 Palestinians have been killed, most of them women and children. More than 80% of the population has been displaced.
In sports, sprint hurdler Ronald Levy's B sample has returned a positive result, confirming 2 banned substances found in his A sample by a World Anti-Doping Agency lab in Canada after he was tested out of competition last month. Levy will now have a hearing on the matter and faces a possible 4-year suspension from the sport. The substances in Levy's samples were GW501516 sulfoside and GW501516 sulfone. The International Cricket Council has imposed a 6-year ban on former West Indies player Marlon Samuels following his involvement in alleged corrupt behavior during the Abu Dhabi T10 in 2019. Sharif Sargent reports.
Samuels, who was part of the Karnataka Tuskers but did not play in the tournament, was found guilty on 4 counts. They include accepting favors that brought himself and the game into disrepute and concealing information from investigating authorities. Sportsmax reports that the ban is a result of an independent tribunal's findings, and it comes 15 years after Samuels had previously been punished for a similar offense. The ICC found him in violation of several anti-corruption codes during the Abu Dhabi T10. The Abu Dhabi T10, being an Emirates Cricket Board-run tournament, operates under its anti-corruption code. The ICC, by its rules, conducts investigations into breaches. Samuels, whose ban took effect from November 11, was initially charged by the ICC in September 2021, and the verdict was reached in August of this year. The batsman and off-spinner, who played a pivotal role in West Indies' T20 World Cup victories in 2012 and 2016, announced his retirement in November 2020, having amassed over 11,000 international runs across formats. Sharif Sargent, ABS Sports.
That's the news on PBCJ. Have a great weekend.